Hi everyone, Timothy from Billingrails here. In this video, I'm going to show you how to set up transaction pricing if you charge a percentage of transaction for as fees on your platform, right? This applies to if you're a fintech, if you offer like any transaction-based type service, right? Wallet services and the like. And this is going to cover setting up pricing to connecting your system with billing rails, right? So you get notified whenever a transaction happens. So there are four simple steps to this, right? The first is you create your customer account, right? So we know who to debit, right? The second is you create a meter, right? Meters are basically how you what transactions you listen for, what events you listen for, sorry, on your end, in which case would be successful transactions, right? So you need to set that up to track it. The third is you will need to create a pricing plan and then enroll the customer into that pricing plan, right? And then the fourth is you send transaction events, and basically what that means is every time a transaction happens, right, you send an event to our end, and then we will be able to like bill the customer, right? So in this particular video, I'll be running through an engine pricing setup. I'll make a second video where I run through like another use case as well, but they'll still follow the same principles. In this particular scenario, the pricing here is 1.5% plus 100 naira with a 2,000 naira cap for local transactions, right? And then 3.9% plus 100 naira for international transactions, but with no transaction cap. Right, so as you can see, there are different pricing depending on different parameters for different transactions, right? And you'll be able to set that up, and it still follows like these four steps. All right, let's dive into it. The first step is, of course, to create a customer account. I'm calling this fintech Altro Payments. So I'm going to put the merchant ID here because if you have your system, if you have merchants on your system, you definitely have like IDs for them, right? So that is what your ID would be, and we would use that to connect the systems to Billingrails as well. I'll show you just in a moment. Merchant run at merchant.com. This is an organization. Default currency doesn't necessarily matter. Okay, and you always get to see what the API call should be that you should make. All right. Now that is step one done. Right. Step two is to create a meter, right, which is where things start to get a little interesting. Would call this meter transactions, right, because what we are listening for is when transactions happen, right? We're going to set up, let's say the name of the event on our end is called charge.success, right? And I want to map using merchant ID, right? So I want to pass merchant ID on my end. Remember when I saved the details of the customer earlier, I saved it with I saved like a particular ID for them, merchant one. That is their merchant ID on my system as Altro Payments, right? And that is how you're able to connect them. And so this is where you get to set up like multiple profiles. So let's come back here. For what we are trying to do is separate is first NGN transactions, right, that are local transactions. We want to charge them differently, and then NGN transactions that are international transactions, we want to charge them separately as well, right? So we're going to set up two different profiles, still the same events, but just two different profiles to track two different things. The aggregation property, which is the thing we are listening for in this charge.success event, is amount, right? Because it's amount that we are calculating a percentage of. And we want to say where the currency is NGN, right? Give me a moment. And the transaction, right? Transaction is local, right? So that is the first profile, local transactions NGN, right? Then we'll create a second profile, again still on the same meter, right? A second profile where we would say this is international transactions, right? We are still listening for amount, where currency is NGN, right? And where transaction type, oh sorry, this should have been transaction type. I'll change that above. Transaction type is international. Again, this parameter can be anything you set on your end, like you can literally configure it here, right? It's up to you. Sorry, let me edit this. Transaction type is local, transaction type is international. So these are the two profiles. We're listening out for chat.success. We are connecting it using merchant ID. So we'll send merchant ID with every event, right? We are calculating based on amount, and we are separating local and international transactions separately, right? Again, as always, you can always see how to, the API call for how to make this call here. Okay, so we've created the meter. Step 2 done, right? The third step now is where we create a pricing plan and enroll the customer, right? So let's go to plans. We'll create a plan. Let's call this plan transaction fee, NGN transaction fee, whatever, regardless, NGN transaction fee, right? Let's say the currency is NGN. All right. Then let's add fee. Right. The first fee we want to add to this plan is the fee for local transactions. Right. Local transactions, and we want to charge it as a percentage. Right. The percentage is 1.5%. The flat amount is 100 naira. Maximum amount is 2,000 naira. Again, that is the fee on the local. That's the local fee. The fee for local amounts. One thing that is not here is the ability. It's available via the API, but not available on the dashboard. Is the ability to charge on every transaction, right? On this dashboard, you can just see ability to charge per day, per week, per year, but on the API and soon to be added to the dashboard, you'll be able to charge transactions as they happen, right? But regardless, it's still the same event. All you need to do is just change the frequency, right? And then let's connect the meter now to this transaction fee, right? So we're listening for events, for transactions, right? And we're using the default profile, which is where the currency is NGN and the transaction type is local, right? So let's save the fee. But we want to also have an international transaction, set up the fee for international transactions as well. And we do that on the same plan, right? Not on a different plan. So you just get to add a second fee. Let's call this international fee. International fee, we can call it that. It's also a percentage, right? But 3.9%, right, plus 100 naira with no. We'll still make this every day, yeah. With no transaction cap, right? So change profile. We get to say international transaction. Remember the meter profile we set up earlier, right? You get to set it here, right? You get to select it here, the international transactions. So the filter is already done. So we'll listen for chat.success events, we'll listen for the amounts, and then we'll filter for when transaction type is international, and then apply this pricing to it, right? Again, whatever you do here is also possible via the API. Yeah. All right. So I think that should be good, and we should create the plan. All right. So we've created the transaction plan, right? We call it NGN transaction fee. Don't mind my naming. Local transactions are charged 1.5% plus 100 naira with a 2,000 naira cap, right? Again, we can make this charge per transaction and not make them per day. It's just not available on the user interface, right? All right. So I just wanted to show that. And we need to enroll the customer, all right? So what we'll do is we'd create subscriptions. Basically are an enrollment of a customer into a recurring, whatever recurring fees you want them to be, right? They don't have to be subscriptions in the traditional sense of it. So let's say this is NGN pricing. I want to enroll them in the NGN transaction fee plan, right? As you can see, we are not charging them anything on the get-go. We'll just charge them at the end of each billing period because we set it to be daily, right? If we set it to be per for each transaction, what will happen is we'll charge it per transaction. Again, it's just a matter of like configuration as well. Another interesting thing is when you're setting up payment method, right? There's manual or there's automatic, and this automatic means you can connect it to a payment processor. You can connect it to your own internal payment systems, right? So if you have your internal wallet system, you can use Billingrails for like the calculation, all of those events, and still and Billingrails then like charges, right? Makes the charge whenever you're ready, or you handle the charge whichever preference works for you, whatever is your desired preference. But for this video, I'll leave this as manual, right? And yeah, so the part now, right? So this is the third step done, right? So the last part now is to send an event, which is this fourth part: send transaction events to Billingrails whenever a transaction event happens, right? And what that means is when a transaction happens on your end, you send it to the meter that you had set up earlier, right? With the particular details, right, with the transaction amount and all of that. So on the documentation, I've pre-filled like some of these spaces, but you can try them on your end as well. So I put the key, the event it charged, the success, and then the properties are where you get to like set the thing that you're sending, right? So let's say this is an NGN transaction. Let's try one that is for 5,000 naira. Let's say it's a local transaction. Remember earlier we set transaction type, right? Merchant ID, remember it's for this merchant, and it's merchant 1. The external ID is merchant 1, right? Yeah, merchant 1. That's the ID on our system as Altro payments, right? So we'll send that as well. Payment method, let's say it's a card payment, right? All right, let's report this. All right, so we've sent a 5,000 naira local transaction, right? Let's send the same call, but let's make this transaction type as international, right? And let's send that. All right. So let's check here if these events have come in. Give me a second. Meters. Transaction success. Yes. So as you can see, this is what happens when you connect your system to Billingrails, right? The events show up. So this is the local transaction, right? The amount is 5,000 international, and then for the local transaction, as you can see, using the ID, we are able to map it to the correct like account, right? Without necessarily communicating like email and all of that, just using the ID. And then when we come to subscriptions, right? Again, let's preview the upcoming invoice. So local transactions, as you can see, the 5,000 naira was charged at 1.5% plus 100 naira, right? And the international transaction was charged at 3.9% plus 100 naira, right? All right. In the next video, I'll be taking you through another use case. But yeah, thank you.